coming right there.
Hey guys, this week on Tactical Rifleman, we're going to be reviewing the best of the best pistol optics out there. I'm going to go over the pros and cons of each of them, and then we're going to let you guys make that educated decision. But before we do that, I'm going to give a big shout out for this week's sponsor. All right, hey guys, summertime's camping time. I like to have my camper stocked, not just for going camping, but I like to have it stocked so I can just grab it and go. And part of that is having shelf-stable food in it. Now, everybody knows that Nutrient Survival is great shelf-stable food. You get 25 years out of it. You all know it's got all the special ops, nutritional grade stuff in it. Breakfast is usually their single servings, chocolate grain crunch or hearty apple cinnamon oatmeal. Middle of the afternoon, I like their triple mac and cheese. Now, I've got the full 2-burner stove, but why tear up the whole kitchen when I can just use my jet boil, boil a little bit of water. Remember, all their stuff is already cooked. All I'm doing is I'm just soaking hot water up into the noodles. That's all I'm doing to it. I like to always add a little bit of extra protein to it. You can't beat macaroni and cheese with a little bit of chicken in it. But guys, great food. It's shelf stable. It's perfect for those hikes. It's perfect for just going out camping in the backyard. It's perfect for putting into your off-road camper, pulling behind your Jeep and going up on the mountain. NutrientSurvival.com. Use promo code TR10. It's going to save you 10%. All right, guys, welcome back to Tactical Rifleman. We are going to go over the best pistol optics that are on the market right now. And there's lots of other brands and all, but these are my personal favorite. Full disclosure, every one of these optics was given to me from that parent company. Not a single company is paying me a dime to talk good about any of these optics. All right, I'm giving you guys my personal feedback. You're going to see a lot of these optics have the snot beat out of them because I have put a lot of rounds through these things. All right, so you start talking optics, optics on rifles. You know, everybody's EOTechs and red dots. We didn't start getting them till the early 90s when I first got the Special Forces, and the older Green Berets, they were like, no, glass breaks, battery dies. Stick with iron sights, iron sights, iron sights. Okay, fine, I'm the young Green Beret, give me that new optic. And I loved it. Fast forward just less than a decade, and every combat carbine has got a optic on it because it brings so many benefits to the fight. Same thing with pistols. Pistol optics have been around literally for decades, but there are certain disadvantages to running them on pistols. You see, it was predominantly the competitive shooters doing open class with their pistol. They're running big Seymour, stuff like that. But at the same time, while they do have disadvantages, if you look at the advantages that they bring us on a combat firearm, I've been saying it for a long time, like mark my words, within 5 years, all combat pistols will have optics on them. Here we are 5 years later, and just about every special ops unit that's anybody, that they've gone to running optics on their pistols. They're much better to use in combat shooting. They're much better to use while running night vision devices. And there's just so many advantages to these things. And all right, so you've made the decision, we're going to put an optic on our blaster, but which one do we get? Now, when you start getting into them, one of the biggest things that people want to talk about is battery life, because a decade ago, you'd get a month out of your battery in your pistol optic, and that's not reliable enough for somebody to run for a everyday carry pistol. It's just not. But battery life has come a long ways, but you're going to see on some of these, it's gonna be a con. It's gonna be a pro on others, but it's gonna be a con on a lot of these. Now, you start talking clarity of the glass, the size of the window, and what that's giving you is that situational awareness, being able to see more of the battlefield, understanding you're shooting with both eyes open, but the more that you can see through that, easier it's going to be for you to find that reticle or just that red dot in there. An important one for me is it's got to be tough. My gear takes a beating. In classes, students will see me taking that unloaded gun and dropping it on the gravel on the optic. Why would I do that? Because nobody would do that in real life. I'm here to tell you, I have seen guys trip and completely faceplant getting off the helicopter wearing night vision. I have seen guys get that Humvee door, the armored Humvee door, slammed on their optic. I have done halo jumps where guys have landed so hard they've actually broken their Leopold scopes. I had one jump, the guy stuck the whole barrel of the SAW rifle through his calf. I mean, parachute ops, mounted vehicle ops, helicopter ops are rough on kit. Piece of glass, batteries, this stuff's it has to be tough. Otherwise, it's just for competition shooting, you know. Combat optics, these things have got to be tough. Some of these are tougher than others, but you'll notice there's a lot of other brands that are not represented on the table, and that's my biggest reason for not even mentioning them, is simply because they're not tough. They're not going to hold up. They can't take the environments. They can't take being put underwater. They definitely can't take being slammed in the door of a Humvee. Now, another big one for me and a lot of other combat shooters is having an exposed emitter versus an enclosed emitter. And by that, basically what I'm talking about is you're painted glass in the front, that emitter is back here. It is projecting that dot or that reticle up onto the back of that piece of glass. And having it exposed like that, with you having it on the top of that gun, you've got it pressed out on that gun, you get one raindrop that comes down and hits that emitter, one snowflake comes down, you know, that mortar shell goes off and that chunk of mud then lands on top of it. You understand, you reach in there with your gloved finger, you're trying to get a chunk of mud off of your emitter. It's not, you understand, it's not coming off. It's not. You're gonna need to take a couple seconds, water, whatever, to clean it off. There are techniques for getting snowflakes and rain and stuff like that. Basically pull it back and blow onto it real quick and then press that gun back out. But it is a disadvantage. That's one of the advantages of the optics that have an enclosed emitter, all right? So for guys just doing EDC, that might not be a big deal for you, but for me, when I think EDC, that's me protecting my family, is it not? And who says that can't happen out in a parking lot in a rainstorm, right? So even for the civilians, having an enclosed emitter versus an open emitter, that's kind of high on my list. Now, like I said, there are a bunch of brands, and I know I'm hurting some people's feelings because they're not represented here. For example, EOTech has got a great new one out, but I haven't had enough time to put to shoot it. I haven't. And just because they market things great, you know, put your money where your mouth is and let's see how it actually holds up. I'll do a video on that one down the road. All right, let's start with the RMR. All right, guys, we're gonna start with the Trijicon RMR. This is the benchmark that everybody else measures their pistol optics against. It's not one of the original ones. It's not. You can go all the way back to the Doctor or the J-Point. There's lots of dots before this one, but the Trijicon RMR has become the standard. It's American made, which is kind of a requirement for US SOCOM. It's a big deal. Now, the newer ones have the newer ones have a 4-year battery life. I want that to sink in because you can literally put the pistol down, never have to worry about the battery being dead. Me personally, every year, swap the battery out. Now, here's the disadvantage of that. The RMR, there's no way to access the battery. You have to actually take the optic off of the gun to get to the 2032 battery underneath. But because they're using those big watch batteries that everybody's used to for their other optics, the batteries last forever, basically, right? 4 years. But it's kind of a con. Now, this is a tough optic. All right, you can bang on this thing. You're not going to hurt it. You're not going to hurt the RMR. They've improved the top up around it where the metal overhangs out in front of the glass, so that if you need to rack it on your belt, if you need to rack it on the edge of a barricade, you need to rack it on that guy's eye socket, whatever you need to do, you're not going to damage the glass on the front of this thing. They've got different options for size dots. They only run dots. They do not have other reticles available. You can get a 1 MOA dot, which is a very small dot. I might consider that for like putting it as a backup on a carbine in case my primary optic died. They have a 2.5 MOA dot, and then they have a large 6.5 minute of angle dot. That's a big dot, guys. That would be for in close, those competition guys that, you know, they're not worried about long range shots, because that long range, that bigger dot actually covers up that whole target. It's very hard for you to see the target. Me, go stick it in the middle. The 2.5 MOAs, that's, for me, feels the best size dot for running this. Now, the disadvantage, it does have the exposed emitter that I was talking about earlier. And the other day, we're out and it's raining cats and dogs. You start shooting, the dot is there, and then all of a sudden the dot just completely washes out. What happened? That one raindrop came right down and landed on it. Pull it back into your workspace, blow hard. That, you'll see the water fly up, and water droplets will fly up onto the glass sometimes, no big deal. That dot will, as long as the emitter's clear, it will project the dot up onto the wet glass, but you can then press it back out and you can at least see that dot. Ideal? No. Does it work? Yes, it does. But let's say you get mud in there, something like that. No, snow. If it's cold, you're not going to be able to get the snow out. You're going to need the corner of your blouse. You're going to need a Q-tip, something like that. It's just not going to work. Now, this is primarily the optic that you'll see US SOCOM running, but understand that is because they have the requirement that it must be American made. And just like our iPhones, all the rest of these, or a lot of these, are they're made overseas. So RMR, this is the benchmark. I'll tell you what, let's go to the AimPoint Acro next. All right, hey guys, this is the AimPoint Acro. Some people call it the mailbox. Look at the size of that puppy right there. All right, now, AimPoint, they're known for their tough military grade optics. You can have a SEAL team lock it out of the subs. You can have a crappy Green Beret halo it in and completely face plant, and you're not gonna hurt this thing, you're not. When it first came out, everybody jumped at it because enclosed emitter. All right, it's completely enclosed. It's not just enclosed like SIG has one out that looks enclosed, but it's really just a plastic cover that goes over top of it. Understand, if you go underwater, even if it's just your Humvee fell in a canal, by the time you get out, understand that water's not running out of it. It's going to hold the water inside of it rather than keep it out. All right, it's not a good idea to run caps like that. But this one is completely enclosed. Now the newer ones, the original ACROs had terrible battery life. It was to the point to where every time I took it out of my gun bag, I pretty well knew I had to put a new battery in it. Now I'm exaggerating slightly, but I'm not exaggerating a lot. All right. Now battery life, they fixed it. And you're looking, they claim a 5-year battery on it. Okay, I haven't had it 5 years yet, but I'm here to tell you it's still running. It's still running. So this one's got a 3.5 MOA dot. Again, remember I told you in the middle, that's a decent sized dot. The biggest selling point for this thing is that enclosed emitter, all right? And it's tough, guys. I can beat the snot out of this thing. You're not gonna hurt it. You're not gonna hurt this thing. And that's important, maybe not for a lot of your competitive shooters. They want bigger glass, stuff like that. But for operators, those warfighters overseas, understand if I have to pull this out of my holster, it means my primary gun has just shit the bed on me. And I need to know that when I bring that sidearm up, it's going to be able to accomplish the mission for me. I can't have any doubt in my mind at all. So the ACRO, very, very tough. Now it does have the smallest window of all of these optics here. The actual window that you look through is it's much smaller, but that's because the whole frame of the mailbox is very, very robust. Now remember, you're shooting with both eyes open, but by having it that long with the smaller glass, you're having to basically take that toilet paper tube and try to find the dot in the middle of it. So you'll hear people complaining, I can't find my dot, I can't find my dot. All right, but understand the ACRO, still one of the best optics that has an enclosed emitter on it. I'll tell you what, let's move on to the 507. Next optic I want to talk about is the Holosun 507. Notice it looks a lot like all the other optics out there. Why? Because Holosun, Chinese company, basically bought a bunch of them at SHOT Show, went home and reverse engineered them. Here's the deal though, Holosun at my first SHOT Show back in 2001, right after the initial invasion of Afghanistan, 2002, they were like an airsoft company. Fast forward, Holosun has got some great optics out now. Why? Because they reverse engineer the stuff that works and they learn from it. But the cool part is Holosun also then improves upon other stuff, because a lot of the other companies that are just, well, we're good with it, we've cornered the market. Holosun is hungry. Holosun wants part of that market. So anyways, it takes the exact same footprint as the Trijicon RMR, which means everybody that already had those guns cut for their RMR optic could now get that Holosun 507. The battery life jumps up to 50,000 hours for this thing. All right, how do they do that? Well, a couple different ways. One of the other things they added was, you'll notice there's a little solar panel on the top here. So even if your battery is dead, if you're outside, it will actually, it'll run that optic even if your battery is dead. It's got to be a bright day. I've never had to use just the solar panel because I don't let my batteries die. I check my stuff. What I mean by that is, as the battery starts to go dead, it'll blink, just a real quick blink every so many seconds, just to let you know, hey, battery's starting to get low. All right, it's got what they call shake awake. So if you let it sit, let's say you have it in that nightstand next to your bed, all right, it's automatically going to turn off after so long, but then as soon as you go to grab it up, it immediately turns back on to that brightness that you left it at. That's cool. That's very cool. One of the things I thought was awesome with it was they took the red dot that everybody else has, all right, that small little dot for aiming at long distances, but they then put the little circle around it, kind of like the EOTech reticle. We call it the donut of death. Everybody loves the donut of death on their rifles because that big circle helps you find the dot faster. And then when it comes for that definitive aim way at that long range target, then you can use that little itty bitty dot in the middle. So the center dot is much smaller than you'll find in a lot of other people's red dots, but it's got that donut of death reticle on the outside. Now you have the options with this. If you're a dot guy, you don't like that donut of death, you can turn that circle off. You can, in other words, you can swap. It gives you multiple reticle options. All right, but again, the big downside on this is it still has that open emitter on the back of it. And different colors, you can get the green versus the red. Certain people have different preferences. when I first saw it, I was like, okay, it's a copy. It's not a copy. I took put it up against the RMR and have been putting it up against the RMR and all these other optics, and we beat on these things hard. You understand, I want to bash this thing. I want to bash Holosun optics, but, and I understand all companies make cheap versions. Vortex makes cheap scopes. Leopold makes cheap scopes. Nightforce makes cheap scopes. But Vortex, Leopold, and Nightforce also make very, very high-end scopes. But when it comes to the level of quality in this one right here, 507 is a very, very tough optic. All right, I got a long way to go, but before we get into the rest of them, let's let YouTube slap you in the face with a commercial. I'll see you back in a minute. All right, guys, here's one of the favorites for your competitive shooters. It's called the SRO. That stands for Specialized Reflex Optic. Basically, they took the RMR, right? It's made by Trijicon, and they put a monster piece of glass on the top of this thing. So the cool part is it has the exact same footprint as the RMR. So any gun that you already have cut for it, add to it. It'll go right on, same screws, right? It's got a couple other advantages, disadvantages. One, because it's larger. Your battery life, they say 3 years. I have not gotten 3 years out of this thing. I get about 9 months, 10 months. But again, maybe it's just mine, but that's still, you understand, we're talking almost a year here. But understand, and also I keep my battery levels up really, really high with this thing. About the only time I use this is outside on really bright days when we're running and gunning, doing 3-gun stuff. Unlike the RMR, one of the things they did, because it's the glass is larger and forward, is they have a cap for the battery. You don't have to take the optic off every 4 years, losing your zero to replace the battery. You can just take your screwdriver, undo the cap, and put that 2032 battery right on the top there. Works great. It does. It really does work great. You'll find that a lot of other optic companies are like, yeah, that's a great idea. We need to do that. Okay. Gives you different options for dots, same as the RMR. You got a 1 MOA, a 2.5 MOA, and then a 5 MOA, a big dot for those guys that are only shooting up close competition type stuff. It has a much, much larger field of view. And the advantage of that is, since it's only a dot, you know, whether you don't establish that grip perfect when you're coming out of the holster, one of the biggest complaints people have running an optic on a pistol is when they press it out, they can't find the dot, can't find the dot. All right, now it's easy with a rifle because you're holding the front of the gun, you've got the rifle touching your shoulder, but you also got the rifle touching your cheek, and that centers that pupil behind that red dot on your rifle. You don't have that with a pistol. With a pistol, it is simply one point of contact. So by having that larger glass, it's not allowing you to see more of the battlefield, both eyes open, you're seeing the whole battlefield, but it's allowing you to have more mistake in your grip, how you're presenting that gun. That dot hopefully will be somewhere in that circle, right? So a big selling point for the guys that do a lot of running and gunning, much larger field of view. Now, it is built off of the RMR, so it still has the same exposed emitter in the back. So rain coming down on it, yeah, you might have issues with it, you might. And if you go and look up reviews online, guys, they'll talk about that when they first came out, there were all these people having malfunctions because the glass actually sits forward of the footprint. All right, what I mean by that, you can see back. See how that objective lens projects so much further forward than the RMR. All right, so guys that had their competition guns cut for RMRs, when they put this optic on, the front bell here where the objective lens is actually projected out over the ejection port. Right? And what happened was when that round was being ejected from it, that casing would clip on the front of the optic and either damage the optic or sometimes actually induce a malfunction, stovepipe, something like that. There were complaints about it, malfunctions. I haven't heard about anybody having it any time lately, and here's why. All they did was they adjusted the cut on the slides. That we now sit that red dot optic a little further back. You'll see this is a Voodoo slide. You'll see the front edge of the glass is actually still behind the ejection port of that firearm. I've had zero issues with this, this optic at all. Great optic, but for me personally, I want an enclosed emitter. That's just me. All right, I'll tell you what, let's go to an enclosed emitter. All right, guys, now we're going to talk about the Holosun 509. Basically, what Holosun did was, remember, their 507 was basically an open emitter copy of the RMR. Well, when AimPoint and a couple other companies started coming out with enclosed emitters, Holosun said, you can do it, we can do it better. It's basically just like their 507, if you look at it size-wise, all right? But all they did was they enclosed the emitter on the back of it. It's not just a cover. This thing is legitimately enclosed. Now, they had to change the mount a little bit, so when you order it, you actually have choices. You can ask for an RMR footprint one, or you can ask for an MOS footprint one. So in other words, if you're gonna put it on your Glock, I don't know, my Glock 34 MOS, then I needed to ask for the one that had the MOS cut on the bottom. Comes with the different plates for it. The Glock pistol does, but you need to let them know which one you want. In other words, this version right here is basically, it's got the screw to mount it onto that base plate right there. It comes with one base plate or the other base plate. So you got choices with that. Now, battery life is still 50,000 hours on this thing. It's incredible. You've still got the solar fail safe on it. Still has shake awake. But the cool part is it still has that donut of death reticle in it. You're still optional reticles. Basically, all they did was they took their 507 and they enclosed their emitter. So I mean, guys, still tough as hell. You can knock the snot out of this thing. The window, you can see the glass is still just as large. I want you to see the different size windows from the ACRO, which was the benchmark for enclosed reticles, enclosed emitters, but I also want you to see the size of the optic. Look at the difference in the size of the optics. I mean, does size really matter? Yeah, guys, it really does. It really does. All right, some of us are more fortunate than others. All right. Great optic indeed. Remember I mentioned it has shake awake. Understand that briefs well for that nightstand gun or that rifle that you're putting in the closet. Shake awake really doesn't matter to me personally, because on a EDC gun, you understand, I'm doing this all day long and it's always being shook awake. It being in my backpack, in my vehicle, wherever it is, you understand, it's being moved around. So that's not so much saving you the battery. What's saving you the battery is dimming it. Now, it still has the shake awake to go to that last brightness setting, but I'm not big on the auto brightness thing. They have that, but you notice I don't ever say auto brightness is a selling point for these optics. The problem with auto brightness, and it doesn't matter which company you go with, the sensor for it is always on the top, which sounds great because if you're indoors and it's dark, it dims that dot because it doesn't need to bloom out. And then when you walk outside, bright sky above you, it makes the dot brighter. That all briefs really, really well. It does. The problem with that as a combat shooter, you come into the room and you turn on that flashlight. Now, you've got so much light on the front of you where that bad guy is, but above the optic, it's still dark. So it's keeping the dot dim, and now it's washed out because of all the light. So almost to a man, almost every guy I know, we pretty well turn the auto brightness feature off. I'm not saying a lot of people don't use it, but you'll notice we always run weapon lights on our pistols and our rifles, and I'm not real big on the auto brightness feature. It's there. Shake awake is there, not really benefits to me. I swap batteries a lot on these things, I really do. All right, now let's move on to one of my favorite ones. Basically the same thing, but they added the Vulcan reticle. But let's do another commercial. All right, hey guys, welcome back. I know we left. Doesn't this look like a lot like the last one we just did? Very, very similar. All right, the last one we talked about was the Holosun 509, where they basically they took their 507 and they enclosed the emitter. Awesome bomb-proof scope. All right, now I want you to look how similar these things are. What this one is here, I have on the gun right now, is it is the Holosun 509, but it's built exclusively for primary arms. It has their Vulcan reticle in it. Different reticle generates a lot more light, which in turn eats your battery. But because of that, you'll see the actual size of the optic is a little bit larger. They had to make room on the inside for a larger emitter. But that said, it still comes with your choice of an RMR or MOS adapter plates. So guys, this is what you'll see me running on my work gun. I'm not saying it's the latest and greatest. You guys make your own decision, but I want to tell you why. Let's start with one of the cons right off the bat, because it needs that larger emitter. The battery life on this, as opposed to the regular 509 with the donut of death, that one got dumped down to 5,000 battery hours. This one only has 3,000. Now I want that to sink in. I'm sorry, 50,000. Remember this one, 50,000 battery hours. Now they will tell you that I want to say, I'd have to go to their website and look. They're claiming much more battery hours in this. What I will tell you is I'm changing about once every couple of months. I'm swapping batteries in this thing. All right, but understand I'm using it in classes. I'm usually outside on a bright range, and I'm running the dot very, very bright. All right, so basically it eats batteries because it has all of that additional light being projected, and I'll get to that in a minute. And it still has the solar fail-safe. It still has shake awake. All right, to me that's not going to save it. Now, so the downfall here, the disadvantage, if you're looking for something that you can just put up, is without a doubt the battery life on this is the shortest of everything that's on the table. However, the advantage for certain people, myself included, outweighs that disadvantage. And what it is, it's the Vulcan reticle. I mentioned the donut of death earlier that has the circle with the little dot in the middle, like on an EOTech. And it allows you to find that little dot faster. And then the little dot is for that definitive aiming point for long range targets. That's fine for a rifle. But with this, remember that number one complaint with a pistol is I can't find my dot, I can't find my dot, can't find my dot. Even with the SRO, with that larger piece of glass, if you turn the gun enough degrees left or right, that center dot leaves that pane of glass. You can it enough, it's going to leave that pane of glass. Now, I want you to see how wide the 509 is. It is almost as wide as that SRO is. It's almost as wide, all right? So for them to say, well, the SRO has got larger glass, a little bit bigger. The advantage of the Vulcan reticle is instead of having a donut of death with a little dot, it's got that, in this case, a little chevron. It could be a dot, doesn't matter. But that circle is not here. The circle is way out here outside your field of view. And what that does is when you turn that pistol because you've presented wrong, or maybe you're pieing around a vehicle or under a vehicle, around a barricade. You're not in your normal shooting stance. You've presented that firearm not the way you're used to doing it on a 3-meter flat range, and that dot is outside your field of view. But as that dot leaves, the edge of that circle is now in the frame. Wherever that curve is, if the curve is like this, move the front of the gun that direction. If the curve of the circle is this way, move the gun that way. If it's like this, raise the front of the gun. If it's like this, lower the front of the gun, and your dot will immediately come into that field of view. Now, in order for them to give you that big circle, visualize how many little dots would have to go all the way around. Guys, that's a metric shit ton of light. That's the medical term, by the way. It's a lot of light, and because of that, for them to generate that much light being generated, it drinks batteries. Okay, I'll swap batteries. So we'll be in a class, 2 or 3 classes, whatever, and I'll press it out, and I get that little blink every couple of seconds. No big deal. I can finish the drills that we're doing when I break for lunch. All you have to do, screw on the side, just like the regular 509, and the little battery plate pulls out. You put your new 1632. You notice I've got a lot of these things in packages. Put a new battery in it, push it right back in. You do not lose the 0 on the firearm at all, and you're back in the fight. Biggest selling point for this thing, it's got the enclosed emitter. You can beat on it. You can go underwater. You can cover it with snow, cover it with mud. You get a big chunk of mud there, wipe it off with your finger. But the biggest selling point for this is it's that Vulcan reticle. All right. Yeah, I've got one more optic for you. It's the brand new Vortex. Let's check it out. All right, guys, this is the new Defender CCW by Vortex. It is their new top-of-the-line pistol optic. Their older ones, and again, I'm not bashing Vortex, but understand they were more made for the civilian market, just trying to get part of the market of the RMR. So you go look up a couple of their pistol optics that are currently out. You look at them, the quality, it's just, understand they weren't made to be mil spec. They just weren't. This one is. I'm here to tell you this thing is very robust. First off, right off the bat, it's got a much larger field of view than a lot of these other optics. It still looks small. Look how small that thing looks on this pistol. It looks small, but it's got a very, very large field of view on it. Now remember that disadvantage of the actual RMR, notice how they are very similar, okay? One of the disadvantages of the RMR was you had to completely take it off the optic to get to that battery underneath. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I don't like giving up my 0. You don't have to do that. They took the top loading battery idea off of the Trijicon SRO, and same thing, it's the exact same. It looks like they made the screw in the same factory. The screw cap comes off. It takes the same small 1632 battery that's in all the Holosun optics. So it's decent. It's got shake awake. They've got a different name for it, patent reasons, but it's got shake awake. It's got a 14-hour auto shut off. Why they come up with 14 hours? I imagine it's another patent infringement they tried to run around. All right, whatever. Battery life on this thing, they're screaming 9,500 hours. I have no idea. This is brand new to me. I've only got about 200 rounds through this optic. I haven't had it that long. I'm not gonna lie to you, I haven't had it 9,500 hours, right? One thing I like about it is you'll see me doing this, beating on my optics. And it's because we do, in our classes, we do a lot of one-handed manipulation of the guns. For example, if my shooting my rifle and that strong hand becomes incapacitated, I need to be able to reach across, grab that firearm, and I need to be able to shoot it with just my support hand. If you're in a combat situation, not only do I need to be able to shoot it, I need to be able to reload it, I need to be able to reduce malfunctions. Reduce malfunctions, that's tap rack. How do I do that one-handed? Well, you tap it on your knee, but you can rack it on your belt, rack it on your belt buckle, the edge of your holster, rack it on the hood of a car, whatever. And we're actually using the optic to do that. Right? We used to use the rear sights. They had to take the plastic ones off and give us better metal ones. But now the optic, is that not the perfect ledge to hook on the side of a barricade, whether it's the mirror of a vehicle, your belt, whatever. You need to be able to rack that firearm on something, on anything. The optic is there. We use the optic. And what that's done is the optic companies are like, look, the front of our optics are just getting eaten to hell. The glass then gets tore up. So with the front of the optics always getting eaten up, a lot of your military companies, the companies pushing for that military contract, they made the front of those optics a lot more robust. Vortex following suit, doing the exact same thing. They've built up the front of it here. If you could zoom in close, you'll even see, they call them fast rack texturing. Basically all they did was checkered the front of the edge there to give you a little more purchase. But it'll grab right onto that belt buckle. It'll grab right onto the edge of that Kydex holster, the edge of that wooden barricade, whatever it is. And it is there, thick enough metal that you don't have to worry about tearing up the glass. The glass is recessed behind it. Now this particular one has got a 3 MOA dot on it. Okay, cool. Again, right in the middle, very cool. One of the things I like about this the most is it is bright. People say, well, ours has 10 brightness levels, so does this. But this one is legitimately bright day, bright dot. So the dot is bright enough for you to use on the brightest day outside. So you got 8 visible brightnesses, and then you've got 2 night vision settings on this. Again, because they are pushing this towards the military crowd because they want a chunk of that RMR sales. Cool. All right. Now, as far as disadvantages, again, this is their first real jump into an adult pistol optic. You know, Vortex has got some great low power variable optics, a lot of great other scopes out there, but they're a newer company as far as dipping their toe into the pond of pistol optics. This is their first real jump to a high quality version of it. But doing so, they did it with an open emitter. This allows them to down the road then come up with an enclosed emitter. But for right now, that's like the only downside complaint I have of this is the exposed emitter on the back of it. All right. I'll tell you what though, one of the things that I like the most was, you notice this is the only box out of any of these that I put on the table. And I have all the boxes. I don't care about boxes. I throw boxes away. But here's what this thing came with. Everything comes with an instruction manual. Who cares? It comes with a mount for you to put it on that Picatinny rail, for you to have it on your shotgun, that small pistol caliber carbine. It comes with the rubber cap to keep it clean when you're not running it. So what? Again, I really don't care. But what I do care about is look at all the different screws and tools they came with. And they list on the bags what pistol frame slide to use which screws on. And I'm looking at this and all I did was flip through them, because you see, if you're new to pistol optics, or maybe you've got one, you bought one specifically for your gun, that's fine. But you guys expect me to test all these different pistols. And if I'm teaching a class to a unit that's running, we'll say the SIG M18, I have to be able to teach with the SIG M18. If I'm teaching a class that's running Glocks, I have to run a Glock MOS. If I'm teaching somebody, a police department running a Smith & Wesson, I have to have put my optic on that Smith & Wesson pistol. This Vortex comes with screws, correct length, correct diameter and size, which sounds so easy. It's really not, guys. You'd be surprised how hard it is to find the correct screws. So badass, without a doubt. That blew me away that they did that. I was like, okay, Vortex put a lot of thought into this. They're not just looking for appeasing just the new SIG crowd or just all the diehard Glock guys. They put everything into that box right there. All right, it's made in China. All right, that's going to keep them from getting the military contract right now, but it's tough. And before you want to bitch about, well, it's made in China, so is your iPhone, so is your Samsung that you're watching this video on. That's just the reality of it. A lot of great durable stuff is made in China. It does come with the Vortex lifetime guarantee. I know people that have had to use it like after 2 weeks on different lower end optics. I don't see you ever breaking this thing. I just don't. I don't see you breaking it. I'm gonna try, but as of right now, I've only got a couple hundred rounds through it. It's a tough optic. You know, let's wrap this up. All right, guys, so that wraps it up, all right? You've seen my personal opinion on all these optics. Remember, it's gotta be tough. What is the battery life? That matters to some people more than others. Some of them have different ways of saving the battery, whether it's shake awake, auto brightness control, solar panels, whatever it is. You've got to think an enclosed emitter versus an open emitter, the advantages, disadvantages of each one of those. Me personally, I'm a big fan of the Vulcan reticle. I think they should bypass all the patent stuff on that and let Trijicon, let AimPoint, let these other companies start using that Vulcan reticle, because to me, I love that reticle, but right now they're not doing that. For some of you, it being an American made versus Chinese made, that may be important to you. Doesn't matter, the decision is yours. I hope you got something out of the video. You guys know the deal. Leave the comments below. If you've got personal experiences with these different than what I've had, let me know. I do read all the comments. Y'all take care and shoot straight. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter so you don't miss out on anything.